The way I thought we would set this up is basically take you through the stages of how a film gets financed from its very inception.
Basically, to get a picture made, I need some sort of advance. I can't finance my movies without getting that. So I can only work with sales agents who are willing either to write a check against sales they will eventually make, or make pre-sales. Now that has become a very, very rare thing these days.
Really, when we're talking about gap financing, I guess the point I want to make is that it's got to be for sales agent estimates that can be done, and it's timed with markets to know that those estimates are going to be realized before the film's actually done, and absolutely before the film's released. Because once a film's released and it doesn't end up in the top 5 films for that weekend, the value of it plummets, and there's really no way to recover.
At the end of the day, bond companies are generally willing to guarantee the delivery of technical elements, not paper items, because they don't control those things. And that's normally what is called bonded delivery.
Then you start layering on the financing, and the films just get more and more complicated. And as you alluded to, sometimes these pictures take 6-9 months to close. And within that time, the biggest danger is losing your cast.
One of the easiest countries was Poland on this 4-country co-production that I referenced, because their money was essentially very soft. It came without very many criteria, and it was provided up front almost in totality. And I would compare that to the UK, which has actually been quite a difficult country to do co-production with.
There's also obviously a lot of talk about 3D invigorating the industry, which obviously if you look at the 3D titles this year and the schedule for, last year and the schedule for this year, there's a big hope that 3D will have a big impact on box office and attract people into theaters.
I think you've got a lot of moving parts. You've got soft money coming out of 2, 3, sometimes 4 different jurisdictions. You have a bank that's located typically either in the US or the UK. You have soft money, you have potentially equity, mezzanine, you have all these parties. And I think what happens on a lot of these co-productions is they're built from the soft money up.
3 years ago, he said, "Great news." I said, "What?" "You told me 3 years ago that you could get this film financed if I came to the table with 1/3 of the budget as equity. And I've got it." I said, "Well, that's great, except now you're going to need 50 to 60%. He said, "But you told me 1/3. But I said, "That was, 3 years ago, and those were different times."
These are smart people, so they're not just going to make a picture and just hang out there on the hope that they make a good picture. But looking at, the Jason Statham in an action picture is sort of a good example. If you make that within a certain budgetary range, get your tax deals in place, get your foreign pre-sales done, is that you have some ability to take some exposure domestically, because there's going to be some element of reliability that a studio or that you're going to be able to get a U.S. release of some type.
There's a change in consumer behavior. There are certain films now whereas before I would say almost every film you had a large buying audience for it. Now you're seeing more bifurcation. There's sort of films that are more rental friendly, and there are films that are more sell-through friendly, if you will.
And again, I think that's more of the trend of, hey, there's not that money, we're going to all share the risk together. And we expect to be incredibly busy this year doing independent films. But again, the films have to be just out of the box. If it's on the margin, it's not going to happen.
What I want to cover in this panel is I want to look at the sort of seismic shift that's been happening in the media world.
It's about reach, right? That's the story. Because at the end of the day, what our value proposition to a brand is our ability to get content to mobile devices, and not just the iPhone, all mobile devices, on all carriers, and even internationally.
When it comes specifically to digital content, I think in both directions, either if you're coming from a piece of IP and extending it to the digital space, or if you're trying to launch something in the digital space, it starts with a dialogue with the audience.
I think fans do notice what brands are involved. I did some work with Initiative Media 5-6 years ago. What we found were that only a small percentage of people watching the show at any given point in time regarded it to be their favorite show. But those who did were more likely to watch the show from beginning to end, more likely to watch it every week, more likely to seek out additional content online, more likely to have brand recall and recognize with the brand that isn't more likely to buy the product.